let's all be civil.
All right, how about now? Oh, I got an echo from
Rob, can you unmute and tell us if you hear us? Excellent, thank you.
All right. No echoes, feedback anywhere? Oh, okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming out on a Monday evening. My name is Kate Laramie. I'm a watershed ecologist with the Huron River Watershed Council. I'm here this evening with two of my colleagues, David Lossing, right there, our Director of Government Relations, and Andrea Payne, one of our community engagement specialists and program managers. So this evening we are going to be doing a workshop style activity. So I'm going to be talking at you for a little bit, but then we're going to get up and we're going to move over to that map over there and we're going to do a bunch of drawing. So if you didn't want to engage this evening, I'm sorry, but there will be plenty of opportunity for folks to interact with the maps, ask questions, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, folks on Zoom, we won't be able to do the workshop activity with anybody online, but if you do have questions or thoughts that you wanted to share afterwards, Jan and other folks have our contact info that you can send along. All right, so first just a little bit about the Huron River Watershed Council, starting with the Huron River Watershed. So the Huron River Watershed is about 900 square miles of space. The watershed, the river, Huron River, starts up in the White Lake area and then drains down to the western basin of Lake Erie. This map here is a little bit washed out, but we have a nice print version over there. If anyone thinks this is amazing, we do have free copies of this in our office too. So the Huron River Watershed is home to over 650,000 residents, 65 municipalities, and has a very diverse array of land cover and land use areas in the watershed. We have a lot of agricultural land, we have a lot of natural land, forest and wetlands, and we've got a lot of urban and suburban spaces here also. So what does the Huron River Watershed Council do? So we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I like to make it very clear to everyone that we do not manage land, we don't own land, we don't make policy, so really we have no power. But we get all of our really amazing work done through connections with the community. So we're a science-based organization first and foremost, so we do water quality monitoring all across the Huron River Watershed, both in lakes and streams. We work to protect areas, protect water quality throughout the watershed through lots of different initiatives with partner organizations that drive things like land conservation and ordinance development, things like that. We also do restoration work, things like green stormwater infrastructure like rain gardens, natural shorelines, what I like to call nature-based solutions or restoration work that's rooted in natural nature opportunities to solve problems in the environment. And then last but certainly not least, connect. So we as a nonprofit organization that's really rooted in the community, our goal is to connect with community members like yourselves in order to drive what we see as really positive change. All right, so diving into what we're doing today. So we call this our Green Infrastructure Workshop. So our outline of what we're going to be going over. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about green infrastructure, what even green infrastructure means and why it's important in your community. We're going to talk a little bit about opportunities to protect and enhance green infrastructure once we understand what it is and why it's important. And then we're going to dive into our workshopping activity where we're actually going to get to look at some maps and talk through where are the important areas in your community that you really care about from this perspective of green infrastructure. And we're going to work on drafting what we're going to call a green infrastructure network. So a lot of jargon that I'm going to explain what it all means. All right, so starting with our first topic of the evening, understanding green infrastructure. Well, green infrastructure is just a really fancy word for natural areas, natural habitat. In this part of the world, that's mostly forest and wetlands, but also thinking about grasslands and prairie systems. These are areas that provide really valuable, what we call ecosystem services, which I'll go into in a little more depth in a couple more slides. We refer to this as, well, green, green things, natural things. But we use the word infrastructure because these are areas that provide a really critical role in our communities based on the services that they provide. So we think a lot about infrastructure, like human-built infrastructure, roads, trains, hospitals, these really essential things that we need in our communities for our communities to function. So we want to start thinking about these natural spaces as a different form of infrastructure that we need just as much as our built infrastructure, but in different ways. So looking back in time, before I dive into some more terminology, so this is the Huron River Watershed circa about 1800. So prior to European development of this area, most of this landscape was natural space. Indigenous folks who've been here for centuries were doing a lot of management of the landscape in the form of prescribed burns, some selective clearing of areas, but nothing to the degree of the mass amount of development that we've seen in the last several hundred years. So this is what land use in the Huron River Watershed looked like in the 1800s. A lot of forested areas, a lot of wetlands, a lot of water, most of which has stayed where it is, and then some of these grassland areas. And grasslands are really just areas of more open space where you have a few trees here and there, but they're not our enclosed forest systems. They're also not wet though, typically, like we would see in our wetlands. And this is land use as of 2010. I recognize it's not 2020, it's 2025, but on a scale that's this zoomed out, it hasn't changed too much in the last decade or so. So we've had a lot of development in this area. A lot of people really want to live here, have moved in. Southeast Michigan is where the majority of Michigan's population is. Of course, we've got Detroit to our east, which has been a big metropolitan center for, a couple hundred years. So we have a lot of urban and residential areas you can see in the red. We still have these pockets of natural landscapes, but a lot of those natural landscapes, if they haven't been turned into urban and residential areas, have been turned into agriculture, food production that we need for our growing society. So here's just a comparison of the two side by side. Not only overall do we have a lot of loss of natural habitat, but we also have a lot of fragmentation of natural habitat. So while, maybe overall we've lost, say 50% of forest in a given area, maybe that forest is now all spread out all across the area, right? So you've got these smaller pockets of natural features too. So that fragmentation is really important when we're thinking about those ecosystem services these areas provide, which I'm going to dive into in a minute. So benefits of natural areas. So we're calling them green infrastructure to really hone in on the fact that these are really important to our communities. Why are they so important? Other than just the fact that a lot of us probably love to walk in the woods and swim in our lakes, right? They also provide these really critical services to our environment and therefore the health of our communities. These areas, I'm just going to read off a few of these. Natural land filters and cools stormwater runoff. So when you have rainwater that's falling on the landscape, running through forest and wetland systems, it's going to filter a lot of that water through the ground rather than running off really quickly into our rivers and lakes, which can cause a lot of water quality issues. Similarly, groundwater recharge. So when water is allowed to soak into the ground slowly, it's able to recharge our aquifers and slowly seep towards our rivers, recharging our rivers and lake systems too. A few others I'll point out. Nutrient and erosion control. So nutrient pollution, phosphorus, nitrogen, and sediments from erosion. Those are all pollutants that get into our waterways and can cause a lot of problems. We have to then filter those things out when we want to use water for drinking water, things like that. So our natural areas provide a lot of these benefits that make it easier for us to just live in a healthy way on the landscape. And then of course, things like recreation, scenery, clean air, these other things that we really care about and value in our communities. So this is that term ecosystem services. So these benefits are often called ecosystem services. And they can be quantified, and I've got a slide and I'll talk about that in a minute. But as we're thinking about what are these natural landscapes able to provide us in the form of services, everything from, like I mentioned, the water quality benefits, aesthetics, recreation, and then of course, habitat, pollination, like all of these benefits for our, wildlife and pollination of our agricultural crops and things like that. So I mentioned stormwater runoff, and that's a big thing that we deal with at the Watershed Council, so that's just something I really wanted to hone in on here. So on a natural landscape, you have this whole kind of water cycle. If you think back to probably the second grade when you learned all about the water cycle and where water goes in the landscape. In a natural system, you have a lot of infiltration, a lot of water that's going into the ground. You have very little water that's running off directly into our streams, except for, maybe the ground is frozen in the wintertime, but then hopefully all of our water is frozen too, it isn't just sheeting off the landscape. So you have this very kind of natural cycle of water that allows water to really slow down, really get into the ground and slow down. That's the key takeaway there. As soon as you add imperviousness, so anything that's hard that water can't get through, sidewalks, driveways, rooftops, that water isn't able to get into the ground anymore. It's also not able to be taken up by plants and then evapotranspired, fancy term for water going back into the atmosphere. And you have more water that's then running very quickly off the landscapes into the nearest storm drain, the nearest river, the nearest lake. And stormwater runoff can cause huge problems for water quality and therefore for things like water treatment costs and stuff in our community. So anytime we're thinking about impervious surfaces, we want to be thinking about this kind of loss of ecosystem services, that loss of benefit that those natural landscapes are providing us. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that as temperatures warm too, all of these things tend to get worse. So we have bigger storms now that are moving into our area. That means more precipitation that dumps kind of all at one time. And then our areas that have a lot of impervious surfaces are really suffering from those increases in really intense weather events. So I'm sure probably you all have experienced storm drains overflowing, water flooding down your streets. That just gets worse and more dramatic as the climate warms. Oops, that was supposed to come second. There we go. So quantifying ecosystem services. So I'm not going to deep dive into this. This is like a whole field of study, but just really briefly, a couple figures here. Okay, so this one, a not very fancy graph, but that's a little bit confusing when you just look at it quickly. So here we've got costs of treating water. So like a classic water treatment plant, water you drink out of your tap has been treated so that it's safe to drink. Here we've got costs on this axis, and here we have percent of forest covered. So how much forest is in an area. And many, many studies have shown across the world, but certainly in our part of the world, that the more forest cover you have in any given area, the lower treatment costs you have. So actually, because of what forests are doing, providing these ecosystem services in terms of filtration and things, it's making life cheap for us. Because our wastewater and our utility treatment plants don't have to treat that water as intensively to make it safe to drink. The other thing that I'll just throw in here, so there was a study done in the Huron River watershed about 12 years ago that tried to quantify a lot of these ecosystem services. And really just the number to focus on here is we've got in the bottom right hand corner, over $15.6 million in an annual value that's provided by natural areas in flood mitigation. So the cost that it takes communities to manage flooding, there's a lot of value provided by the natural areas that we still have in our communities. And then similarly, looking at ecosystem service values overall, so not just flooding, not just water treatment costs, but also things like recreation, biological diversity, that kind of thing. We have over almost a $4 billion value that comes with the quantification of those ecosystem services. So not that money is everything, but we do live in a capitalist society. I think sometimes adding numbers to these values can really drive home this point that our natural areas are really doing us pretty big services. Okay, so hopefully now we all think that we understand a little bit what green infrastructure is. Hopefully we think it's important in one way or another. So then we're gonna move on to thinking about how do we protect green infrastructure, right? So, obviously in our built communities, we need places to live, we need roads to drive on, we need hospitals to go to. So we're not talking here about tearing it all down and starting anew. But as we look at our communities and we say, we have some natural areas left, we want to protect those areas, how do we do that? All right, and I'm going to start by talking about what we like to call the green infrastructure pyramid. This is going to get taller. So when we're looking at, in our communities, what is the number one way to maintain ecosystem functioning? So to make sure that all these ecosystem services that we've talked about are as strong as possible in our communities, number one is protecting existing natural areas. If there's a forest there, try to keep it a forest. Number two is reducing impervious surfaces anywhere. So even if you have a neighborhood that's been built next to a forested area, and you've got sidewalks and parking areas that you need in that community, how can you reduce those areas as much as possible? Where could we add porous pavement or the ability for water to soak back into the ground, even in our built environments? And then finally here, those nature-based solutions I mentioned, those restoration techniques that we could add into our already built environments in order to kind of soften the blow, the impact of that built environment on our community. So what I'm talking about here is really things like rain gardens. So you have, your house, your lot in your community, you're not ripping out your driveway anytime soon. What's something that you could do to, benefit your little regional ecosystem, maybe something like a rain garden that could help capture stormwater and that kind of thing. So we're gonna really focus today in this workshop on protecting existing natural areas. We're also gonna secondarily be thinking about reducing impervious surfaces, in our built areas. We're not gonna be talking about these nature-based solutions, but these restoration techniques are another thing that Huron River Watershed Council helps communities think through in areas where you have a lot of built environments already. How could you improve those areas? So that's definitely something that we can come back and talk about at a later date. So how do we protect these areas? Outright protection. So these are just some techniques that we're not going to get into in detail today in this workshop, but I just want to provide a little bit of context. Things like conservation easements, where property owners sell or donate the right to develop their property, protecting that property forever with a conservation easement. The sale or donation of land. So maybe I want to sell my piece of property for it to become a park or a preserve, so that it can't be developed in the future. Local government land preservation programs, like the one in the township here, can really support these types of programs. And then finally, conservation villages that feed into those local government conservation programs. So what can taxpayers do to try to drum up money to support protection of land? We can also protect land through planning and zoning and things like overlay districts, which Scio has been thinking a lot about, and is why we were invited to come and chat here. But things like setbacks. So an ordinance that says you can't build within 300 feet of a river. Master planning, so deciding where you can build what types of structures and thinking about those green infrastructure pieces and saying, we really don't want to build on top of green infrastructure, so where could we build instead? Open space provisions. So these are all different opportunities for local governments to say, how can we control and manage development in our community so that we see, healthy development, but where we want to see it, and so that it benefits our community rather than takes away from the community. So then that brings us though to where do we protect natural land? So that's how. So now we've covered, natural land is important. We want to protect it, hopefully. We have different tools that we could think through. But then the question becomes where? And this is a map of Scio. You have a really lovely one here on the wall. And you look at this landscape and you say, where do we begin? So that is what we're going to be talking about in this workshop today, is identifying the where. All right, so before I make you all get up and get Sharpie markers and move around, we're going to talk a little bit more about our assignment. So now we know what green infrastructure is, and now we're going to move on to thinking about the green infrastructure network. So this network is an interconnected network of open spaces, natural areas, and waterways. So I mentioned fragmentation earlier, so maybe a certain community has lots of forested spaces, but they're all spread apart. They've all been broken up by agricultural development, rural or residential development, urban development. So you have all these natural areas, but maybe they're totally not connected. So we want to be thinking about how can we connect these areas. Why do we care about connecting these areas? Well, the network of green infrastructure supports native species. So if we're thinking about wildlife and the ability of wildlife to move through our network. A network also maintains our core ecological processes. So as we're thinking about these ecosystem services, little tiny pockets of wetland maybe aren't going to be able to provide all of those ecosystem services we talked about, but big expanses of wetland may be able to provide more of those services. So thinking about maintaining those ecological processes as much as possible. Sustaining our air and water resources. So all of those other ecosystem services that may become secondary to things like clean water, pollinator habitat, but recreation, scenic beauty, things that we really care about in our community. And then overall contributing to public health and quality of life. We know that mental health is greatly improved when you're in nature. There have been lots of studies that have showed that, just like walking, for 5 minutes a day out under some trees can really improve your mood over time. So thinking also in this network about, where are these spaces, who has access to them, and how can we overall spread this network across our community to really bolster all of these different benefits. So I've got a couple different graphics to help you think about what I mean by a green infrastructure network. This is the first one. So on a landscape, we've got our upland areas where we like to build our houses that aren't wet and soggy. We've got our lowland areas where we have our rivers and lakes, and you have all this landscape in between. And just like a drop of water, if it's gonna fall up near your house and eventually run down towards a river or a lake, this whole landscape is connected. It's connected for pollinators, other wildlife, and it's also connected for those ecosystem services, groundwater recharge, movement of water through the ground. So really starting to think about, rather than just like this lake by itself or that forest by itself, this whole connected layer of systems. I kind of prefer this graphic though, because I think this aerial view is a little bit more useful for our human brains. And this is what we're going to be doing in our mapping activity. There we go. Okay, so here we have in this graphic, we've got our hubs. These are our large remaining areas of natural land. I don't put a number on large, and that bothers some people that really like to follow the rules, but large, big. This is a forest that you walk into, and you're like, wow, this is a really nice forest. This is a wetland you walk into, and you're like, wow, there's no way you could build a house there. These are our big areas of remaining natural land. And then we've got our sites. So our sites are going to be our smaller natural areas. Maybe a pocket wetland in between a few houses. Maybe a pocket forest that's in the middle of an agricultural field. So we've got our hubs, which are our big areas that can really still maintain, for the most part, a lot of that ecosystem function. They can serve as really homes for wildlife. And then we have our sites, which are these areas that help connect the network and are really critical in our landscape that has become so fragmented. If we never thought about these tiny areas, we wouldn't get anywhere. But then we've got to think about how we're going to connect these spaces. And these are going to be our links. And the first link that I want folks to think about is rivers and streams. Riparian corridors, riparian simply means the land that's next to a waterway. So our riparian areas are going to be like the landscape right next to our streams, are really, really great connectors of these hubs and sites for ecosystem services, for wildlife, and also for things like human recreation. If you want a trail system that goes through the community that connects parks and preserves, along rivers is a really lovely place to put those systems. And then secondarily, we can also look for links in things like tree rows, even sometimes agricultural fields, particularly if you have a farmer that's working on doing things like cover cropping and really maintaining the health of soil systems. Maybe they've conserved the farm, so it's not going to be developed in the future. So those could potentially also serve as links for some of these, to provide some of these benefits across our network. So this is our green infrastructure network that we're thinking about. So just to reiterate, we've got our hubs that anchor our network. We have our sites. There are smaller ecological landscape features that could be the origin or destination for species. And then we've got these links that really hold the whole network together. So now we're going to do this for Scio. So we're going to start by thinking about our hubs, sites, and links, and then we're actually going to draw them on a map. And this is the scariest part to people. They don't want to put pen to paper, but I promise you, you're not going to mess anything up. All these maps are digitized, and you can draw on them, and I can always remake them. Just really quickly, so I'm going to, first, before everyone moves, I'm just going to walk through what resources we have to work with. Talk one more time about identifying our hub sites and links. We are going to compare our network that we're going to work on creating to the existing network of protected land in Scio. And then we're going to have a little bit of time to add some special features and notes. Okay, so these are our resources, and I have paper. You don't have to memorize this. I've got paper copies. So this is going to be our primary resource. This is our natural features map. It's back there on the table. That's primarily what we're going to be working with. I also brought two other maps. This is our land cover map here, and we've got it pinned up on the board over there. So we're not going to be messing with that map unless you guys really want to, but we're really using that map as a reference. I think that visualizing things in land cover classes, so we've got forests, wetlands, developed in different intensities. So our heavy urban areas are going to be our darkest red, moving out to our pink areas are going to be our lower density development. I think that can just be nice to kind of glance at and think through where are these areas that we maybe want to preserve, where are areas that actually may be better for restoration, which we're not really going to focus on today, but we can think about later. So just know that map exists if you want to go stare at it. And then we've got our protected lands map. So thank you to Scio Township who sent us your GIS layers, so this is real data. And we're gonna pull this map out a little bit later, but it shows what lands are already protected in Scio Township through all of the great land preservation programs that your community has already been working on. So diving a little bit more into our primary map. So this map contains two features. So there's two things in the legend. The first is what we call our bioreserve areas. Those have been identified by the Huron Watershed Council, and I'm going to talk more about them in a minute. And then we also have wetlands that have been identified by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. So when we get over to the map, you can see it a little bigger. I'll point out more in detail what that means. So what is the bioreserve map? So back in 2007, my predecessor, right there, Chris Olson, if anybody knows Chris, led this very cool project called the Bioreserve Mapping Project. And what she set out to do with an advisory committee of all of these really great ecologists was to map out the remaining large hunks of natural land all across the watershed. And they did this using satellites, and they drew all these shapes around remaining big hunks of natural land. And then they used this really fancy model to score these areas based on all these different criteria. How many wetlands were in them, what different types of topography were there. Was it all flat? Did it have a lot of hills? Did it have a mix of both? They fed all of this information into a model and it spit out scores for these areas. So what I've done on the map behind you is I've ranked all of the areas, the bioreserve areas in Scio Township, just against the other ones in Scio Township. So you can see where your highest scoring areas here, where your lowest scoring areas here. But I don't want folks to fixate too much on the bioreserve areas, right? Like, what are bioreserve areas? They're really our hubs. They're those big areas of remaining natural land. So while we've mapped them out there, you all know your community. So if you're pointing out an area that the bioreserve map doesn't cover, and you're like, this is really important for us, that's why we're here today. We really want to learn from you all. What have we missed? Where could we connect these systems? It's a little bit of background on the bioreserve map. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. And I have a summary slide that will stay up here, so you also have to memorize this. So we're gonna start by outlining our hubs. And there's a lot of folks here, which is awesome, and next time I think maybe we'll bring 2 maps. But we can kind of rotate around and we can talk to each other. Not everybody wants to draw. But we're gonna start by outlining our hubs. Most of the bioreserve sites that I mentioned could be called hubs, and it's totally okay to outline an existing bioreserve site. We're gonna outline the hubs in red. Okay, and then we're gonna move on to identifying sites. So these are those smaller areas, maybe disconnected from hubs. I think a great example of this is that like forest in the middle of an agricultural field. And we're gonna outline our sites in green. So these could be areas that are really important for like wildlife to move to, but maybe they don't provide all those ecosystem services that our hubs do. And then finally our links. So we're gonna start by looking at riparian corridors. So there is a rivers overlay on that map. So outlining areas around our rivers, tree lines, things that you may be aware of, a trail system that's in the community that maybe has nice tree features on the sides of it. So we're gonna outline our links in blue. And I'm gonna keep this slide up there. So we're just gonna start by doing this. The scariest part is always the first person to draw a map. So we're just gonna spend some time walking through what it looks like to build out our green infrastructure map. And then after this, we're gonna be comparing the draft map that we've created to the lands that we have already protected in the community, make sure we didn't miss anything. This can feel like a scary exercise to folks, but what's gonna happen after this is we're gonna take all this information back to our office. I'm gonna stare at a computer with a bunch of different layers, and then we're gonna draft up a draft green infrastructure map for your planning commission. And then that will be something that the community can continue to think through and look at. This is not our final version. This is just really our opportunity for you all to have a part in this process, rather than just me sitting at a computer staring at satellite imagery by myself. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Yes, sites are surrounded by natural areas, or they are surrounded by development.
So generally they're gonna be, sites are natural areas that are smaller than hubs. So that generally means that they're surrounded by something other than natural areas, whether that's
So it could be
development.
development.
Yes, it could be surrounded by development, surrounded by agricultural land, but there's something that's making that site small, because otherwise it would just be a single. And I'll point out a few examples, yeah.
Is this the first time that this has been done, or was this done before?
Good question, Andrew just walked away. I do believe this is the first time that we've done this for Scio. If we did do this before, it was like 15 years ago. We have though provided the bioreserve map to the township, and the bioreserve map is included in things like your open overlay ordinance language, and I believe in different master planning documents.
The definition here is bioreserves are remaining natural lands.
Correct.
So, but an area that was farmed and then restored to native grasses and flowers, that's not considered a bioreserve?
Short answer is no.
Okay.
Longer answer is the bioreserve map was created using satellite imagery. So if we're talking about a farm that was farmed maybe 50 years ago, became fallow field, and then has grown up into enough of a natural looking space that via satellite imagery, it looked like a big hunk of natural land, it could absolutely be included in the bioreserve map. But generally, we're really looking towards areas that haven't been farmed or really disturbed by a lot of human activity in the last like 100 years. Yeah, but you totally may, we come into communities all the time and somebody's like, my grandfather farmed that, that's not pure forest. I'm like, no, it's okay, that's okay. Yeah. Okay, Andrew, we had a question. Have we ever done a GI workshop in Scio?
No.
Nope, okay, this is our first one. All right, wonderful. Well, let's head over to the map. You can leave your stuff where it is. Okay.
Also, feel free to bring a chair if you want one, if you're on the table as well.
So I'm just gonna point a few things out and then I'm gonna back up. So reminder slide is up there. So we've got our hubs in red. We have our sites in green and we have our links in blue. So this is our map here, Scio. So all of these areas that are blue, green, or yellow are those bioreserve sites. And it is totally okay to outline them. You may say though, okay, this is a bioreserve site, but rather than a hub, I think that's more of a link. So you might want to outline it in blue rather than in red. That's totally fine. As I said, the bioreserve sites are ranked according to how ecologically valuable they are, but that's not to say that all bioreserve sites aren't valuable. We also have our wetlands. So our wetlands are going to be these lighter blue areas with the fun little white marks on them. So we've got a lot of wetlands in bioreserve areas. We also have a lot of wetlands like over here. So this might be a nice example of a site here. And then we've got our stream layer. So this is the Huron River up here, and then our stream network coming off. We are gonna have the opportunity after we really focus on our hub sites and links to hone in on areas that maybe don't fit perfectly in our network, but are really important to the community. So be thinking about if you have some, you're like, right here is where this amazing field of trillium, I don't know, something like that. Have that in the back of your mind, because that's exactly the type of thing that we would never know without community input. Okay, who wants to be our first drawer?
Somebody tells me where to draw, I'm happy to.
Back up.
If you go first, you can outline all the bioreserve areas.
Yeah, so think about hubs, so those big remaining areas of natural lands. And it's okay if you think that it's natural and then there's actually a.
And Saginaw Forest.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Scio
yeah,
Woods,
show me where. This, I would say this and this. This is Saginaw Forest and this is Scio, is it Woods? Is that what we call them?
I forget what it is. It's, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Like that, you think, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Okay. In here, right? Mhm.
Not that whole thing, though. Well, maybe.
Yeah.
That's private property.
Well, it's still okay for it to be
It's okay if
private,
it's
right?
private.
It can be part of it, even though,
Okay,
yeah.
you go for it.
Good catch, good
Yeah.
call.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not worried about who owns it or what's there. We're just thinking about where are those natural features that we care about.
There's a bunch of,
Right up here.
where the Huron Rotary is.
Yeah. That's in here, the Huron Rookery, Dino Drive.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's
Definitely,
We have more red markers floating
Yeah, go
around.
for it all.
Y'all can go wild. Like I said, you're not gonna mess it up, I promise.
Are they erasable?
No, they are
No.
Sharpies. That's why people get a little nervous with this. That's true.
I would follow it.
That's agricultural.
Yeah.
What is this?
It says well here.
No, wetland is
Oh.
that, like the gray.
Oh, maybe it is.
Well, I mean,
Maybe
it
it is
says
wetland though.
medium.
I think you got that one and that one.
Well, this is a wetland. That's a wetland.
Well, you got those two
that, you might
cameras that could
need
be.
to do that whole thing, even though there's some
Yeah, like,
less than.
like that.
Oh, no, where's my son?
Yeah, you know, it's just-
Sometimes it's hard to see what's underneath the flowers. You know,
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
so I
I mean,
missed the tutorial.
You say you wanted to move it around.
Yeah, we go all the way down here. 'Cause this is still.
So you know where.
It may not, yeah, the satellite imagery is off.
Oh, okay.
What about this?
But yeah,
big
they got
area
that. That's
here?
exactly what I was-
Yeah.
So I think we've, circles of green spaces actually.
It's not.
Oh, this is even green.
Okay, yeah, so
Okay, yeah.
forest brown and black markers over there, if you wanted to maybe put a note there and say, oh, think this is actually developed, that'd be
Actually,
great.
it's just, yeah, you're.
Just go
you're
all the
go-
way
Well,
around, yeah.
you're going, yeah, you were going in the right direction there.
Yeah, grab one of those, black markers. So just scrunch, yeah. on the right side.
What does Woodview do?
Woodview
comments is
maybe,
yes,
is it in that green space?
So
Or it's
is this a
behind it?
connector then in here? And then this is another area?
This is
like
It's right here. This is Woodview Consequence. This is Scio
Oh, is that-
Farms.
is
This
it on there?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's behind Tractor Supply, okay. That's all it is.
Well.
Smaller.
Oh, Scio Farms is massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's to the west.
No, because this is Baker. This is Ryan's place, this is Woodview Commons, this is Tractor Supply right here.
Yeah, because that, yeah, everything behind it, south of is
So this is all Delhi.
Yeah.
This is Delhi Park.
So all of that, that whole, is it the?
Yeah, those are the ponds.
Yeah, that could be a really nice site. That's a really big deal.
Yeah,
for those
it is a big deal.
birds.
This is all green.
Green site.
Right, I mean, it's all connected.
It's a site of. Yeah, question, so if we have this much
Wait, green,
is this whole area a hub?
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah, that would be a
generally,
site.
our hubs are gonna be
Right.
broken up
Yeah.
by things like all these little houses, right?
Right.
So like this
We
wouldn't
could
count,
do like an
and
arrow or
this
something.
here.
Okay.
So really the shape of this existing kind of bioreserve area is probably our hub, but something you can think of as saying like, okay, maybe this is a hub.
Right.
Maybe this is actually more of a link, cause it's more of this like riparian area.
that's basically.
Same with this, like, so this to me
Yeah.
looks like
this
kind of
could
a
be
site,
a
it's a little
link or
smaller.
Yeah, I would
And this is kind of a linkage into that site, sort of connects these areas.
Okay,
where-
so these are sort of sites that are
really want
with these little.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very, again, it's not an exact science, there's a little art here.
Would you consider this?
I would, yeah, that's a pretty big one.
Yeah, and this part would be a hub too.
Yeah,
Here you go.
yeah,
All right.
yeah, all right, go for it. Cast those red markers around.
Yeah, we're in Hub City.
Yeah. like some kind of line through here. And then these are.
Yeah, and even, like these areas here, maybe this is one big lake. So fire reserve areas, the way that the methodology works is they always broke the area if there was a major road. So like these are two different areas because there's a road right there. So for our network, you know, it's like, well, the road probably inhibits some, wildlife movement, things like that.
Now I
We're
feel
thinking about ecosystem services.
Because I went outside the line. But this
That's
could
okay,
be.
that's all right, no worries.
Yeah, this
Alright,
is.
we need
I was
blue-
gonna say,
that's gotta be
marker.
there, doesn't it?
Yeah, will you pass a few blue markers around?
Yeah, we need,
This is sort
Blue doesn't show up.
Oh, no, not quite.
Oh, yeah.
Blue doesn't show up very well.
Yeah, that's okay though, because I'll take the plastic off the map,
I
so
think
even if it's
it
hard
might
to
get
see,
more
it's right
links.
as well.
The rest of the board is sort of, this is size.
Yeah, so another thing we can be thinking about is like these little areas, maybe like, could that be a little site? Like where are areas in our map that maybe look like.
Cool.
I see.
Oh, you got a
Yeah,
better marker than I do.
Okay,
Uh,
want the
that's
darker
not
one?
like- that's lighter.
It's just some commercial, you know, putting in that, the development.
Ah, good. So see, so the. So you're looking at satellite imagery, this is.
Yeah.
So, you know, any actual.
Yes.
Senior
Oh,
housing.
Yeah.
right,
And
that's
it's
where
gonna
that's
be the
going.
entrance will be a big.
I just don't know how.
And then
So
with
the
the
street
the hump
infrastructure
should
would
be.
ideally should
Well,
be
but
around.
that could be
Yeah.
maybe a site, right?
And we use
Smaller,
smaller.
Red.
But then
No.
we're.
Maybe that's the green, it's kind of isolated.
Yeah.
We have a green marker over on the side of it.
We have a green
That's
marker.
where like all the.
Yeah, I would think that.
Yeah, we need the full set.
Is that the little ones? The sites there?
Yeah, little ones.
So,
Not high quality. Like
very light green.
Yeah. and then also
Green with green.
I know, it
And like,
doesn't show.
in land protection,
Oh, that's-
it's a nuance.
We grab this one.
It's so isolated.
Yeah.
Oh, and then these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a site?
I would say, I would say these are little sites that have links.
Oh.
Generally.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're meeting.
How about-
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's.
I
development
do.
here.
Well,
There's
they're
little
little
wetlands
so,
right
yeah, I
there.
would do three
It's
little
all
sites and then
connected, there's really no way to get to it, is there? I mean, it's not.
The link is blue.
Yeah.
So this is the thing.
Well, what do we call that?
These
It's
are.
not really a connector,
There's
is
things like.
it? Is it a connector?
Yeah, it's not clear what it's connecting to. Is that the
Oh,
headlight?
yeah, it probably is.
And then obviously any sort of.
So, yeah, I mean, it goes
Which
into.
way?
These are all
I mean,
links,
it is
right?
right.
Same, I mean, yes, this is our.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a link that's.
Got it.
Links are there.
So.
This is Honey Creek.
You're right, we did.
She's gonna take it off. Set that, is there already
Yeah, this is pretty good.
But it has a lot, I think it has.
Yeah, I try to,
Let's say you did.
That's hard to see, but that's what it looks like.
Oh, you
Yeah, I'll
like
probably.
Yeah.
houses under the trees.
This part do you agree? This might be, oh, this is up to no trespass. Hardbound.
Yeah, I mean, like.
Somebody mentioned Trillium, a field of Trillium, and I know where one is. It's down by Scio Ridge and Liberty. The housing developments down there, there's a little private preserve with a little bit of water in it.
This one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live right here. I just circled it in green. There's like a little pond here and then there's like a hiking path.
Right, yeah. And right, on one of the housing developments, it's like the backyards are like a steep slope down. And if you go there in the early spring, it's covered.
Really, I didn't see Trillium last year, but
Yeah,
yeah, there's housing.
Yeah.
Can we tell, do you think it's this one or I can't tell?
Is there housing in there? I'm not gonna be able to
See
tell you.
the little driveways.
I mean, there might be pockets.
So there's apartment buildings stuff there next to
Yeah.
this whole hiking trail right here. And there's a couple of ponds right here.
Right.
It's a wetland, yeah.
Yeah, so I used to run around, there's like a mile or so.
Yeah, through the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you like go through like the pond areas. Yeah. It's really nice.
Yeah. The thing I missed because I'm a more densely populated area. And I was running on the street and I was like, well,
Yeah, that might be worth
How does
having
that
a
look?
Almost seems like it is.
site, yeah.
And then thinking about that river corridor as far as your connection.
Yes, we have to protect
River.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works, because when you come up seeing you know, there's that little preserve along the river.
Oh, yeah, right where it dead end.
Yeah, right where the railroad tracks are going to the, yeah, just before the bike trail. This area there,
That
it's
is
all
a
lined
little,
in, probably in red too.
it's a, or it's a little green maybe, it's small.
Well, it's pretty big. I mean, but there's all this.
Right, you know, there's a big hiking trail along there, and then people use it as access to the river there.
This.
Wait, is this being further? No, I forget what I said. So anyway.
These little pockets, even though they're like golf courses, yeah, like not only are they, you know,
Yeah,
nice
that's
sites, but given they're on that river corridor, like they are connected.
Yeah, that's the industrial park, and then across from it is the entrance to, yeah, that little park. Yeah, and people, you know, there's cars parked all over the place, getting access to the river there, we hear lots of cars.
Yeah, it does, but there are little lines that look like
There are structures in there, but
yeah.
all along this corridor. It's not,
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we do something like this.
yeah, and tie that
This is
in.
sort of a question mark, because it looks like there's some development.
Well, what about where the river crosses, you know, about that intersection where the river crosses, all the way to River Drive.
Like, there's really these like wetland pockets.
Mass Road.
That area, yeah, I mean, we should always want to.
No, it's,
Yeah, or even like these little guys, you know, thinking.
yeah, right here.
Yeah.
National area to me.
You can see the driveways in here.
I don't remember.
Yeah, so under, so, yeah, so previous.
There's still Eve.
that stuff up the middle there, that's green, that's all farmland.
T-Mobile, whatever.
Right behind our house, that's farmland.
Where?
I don't know, I'm not seeing red or green, anything, so I'm just saying the map part, so I'm wondering, is it all farmland?
Donated?
But I can see there's Dexter and Arbor Road, so that's big farm development.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's.
I'm wondering if the Honey Creek is, it's done in Marshall, I'm
I've
wondering
never
if
been there, but is that?
Oh, that's right, there's that
something?
little park in there.
That's a green one.
So that could be the Marshall path. Should that be red or green?
I think it's green, isn't it a
There
smaller
may be a couple
area?
houses in it, you're right.
Is it
A little
really
site
goes over
there.
there? or
This
just-
is development in here.
Cool. Yeah, there is there's some housing in here,
Yeah.
and then it turns into.
Right.
Nature preserve of some sort.
Yeah, zoom it in, yeah.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, I don't know what those are.
Ooh, what do we do with
There's
one?
supposed to be a really big little, sites.
Yeah.
Outside.
Dexter and Arbor Road all the way up to Dexter, some of that
I
is,
know.
like really large
This is
land
Danboy Road.
tracts, like private, I think. I mean, the,
Yeah.
yeah, all the way up there.
After you get to
It
know
looks
them,
great
like
from
Jeff,
above.
your staff wasn't there. You know, I was there years before. I was just there with Jeff, Andrea, Wendy, Karen.
Yeah, I would add Honey Creek, bring Honey Creek all the way down into the river. Yeah.
Just for that one story. Without having on the set. That doesn't bother me. You can tell me. I get it. I probably wasn't the first person to like either, so.
So what's all the greenery that we see here in the middle of this?
This is a lot of golf course, but we did circle some areas around the golf course.
Coming. I mean, they have some-
That's Huron Valley.
Oh,
And a bit of Sunwood Woods.
oh, that's a little private preserve.
Yeah,
That's 16 acres.
yeah.
Well, it's still. Something, it could be private though, we can outline it.
Yeah, I think it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just hard
does
to
somebody wanna
identify
do a
as a
little
site.
green around that?
Which
A
one?
little site, the swim club?
Yeah, it's done. It's-
Oh, it is, I just can't see
You
it.
can't really see them.
Several people have tried to mark it up.
It's funny how things just live there.
Alright, how we feeling? Does another like 5 minutes feel good before we move on to our next step?
Never bothered me.
Sure.
Probably pretty done.
Yeah, pretty done?
I got lunch.
Breast and bras and doing the green.
Yeah, because they're hard to see.
I'm gonna do a little green here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's mark some of these.
I was their third choice.
This is.
Yeah, green was maybe not our
Site
best
plan.
color. We can pick a new one.
For the links.
Yeah, for links, but, you know, these are, could be, you know, things,
Little
areas to
pockets.
preserve, yeah.
What was the hashtag? Preserved. People are just researching stuff like green because you can't see it.
No, that's,
I mean, that
wetland.
sort of thing. Oh, I see.
Well, if you, let the glare come, you can see the.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you kinda, yeah. it goes, right?
You can clearly see it.
Of course, then you can't see what they're showing.
Yeah. That's for Kate to figure.
Choice of one thing.
Oh, wait. What's your question?
Now, we couldn't see the green very well.
Oh, yeah,
But
exactly.
if you put some glare on it, you can definitely see it.
Yeah, it does kind of blend in. Yeah.
Oh, really? It's a good experience.
Okay.
I know, there you go.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something to work on there as a link, yeah. Yes, links are blue, yeah. Links are blue.
Don't want it, 'cause it's
You have
gonna
a link you wanted to add?
be.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Yeah, well, this is actually a lake here. It comes down to South Township, you know, the swamp that. That's this. It's fantastic.
Swamp behind.
Oh, yeah, that's great. We should definitely add that, for
Oh,
sure.
right,
Go
yeah.
ahead and drive.
Yeah.
Perfect, yeah, thanks.
Here, and I think it actually comes.
Yeah, it's
Gets
totally
there.
possible that all of our layers are a little off, so that's where it's really valuable to have folks who actually know what's going on.
Yeah.
Better, better
I
to.
think it goes on the highway, it comes to here. but I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
I'm
it
gonna
does
do
go
that.
under the highway. You can see it on both sides.
Great. This
The
is
tall
township
rushes.
property. Is that, can that be a site?
That seems like a
site.
site, yeah, I would add
Yeah,
that.
that's, yeah.
Here, you wanna?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can have a.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a walk. Nice.
Alright.
This, you wanna link these two?
Yeah, all of those are links, aren't
This?
they?
Yeah, that could be a link.
And even east of there too.
Where is
Yeah,
Sunny
I
Creek?
mean, this one could link back up over here.
We did get it.
You know, like
Honey
here's.
Creek's a big watershed.
It is a big watershed, isn't it?
Well, this looks awesome. You've been my most excited group to do this ever. So so thank you all very much.
Are we outlining Scio Township preserves?
Yes, well, so actually, hold that thought. So what we're gonna do next is, hold the thought. So if you could take those two clips off.
Recording stopped.
Okay?
This one?
Yep.
It's just been
So
focused.
now what we're gonna do. We're gonna this up. Andrew, I'm gonna give you this map.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Now it's clear.
So now let's line the corners up there as best we can. Hopefully it's
Recording
pretty
in
close.
progress.
Okay. So now what we're looking at is these are existing protected lands in Scio Township. So if you see the legend at the bottom, so our protected lands are all of the hatched areas. And I also have a copy of it up on the screen. The white hatches are protected lands that are not public, generally conservation easements. The purple underlay is going to be public parks and preserves. I also added property boundaries on here, so now we have a sense for how many different parcels we're dealing with. But our stream network remains the same. So I just want to give folks, 5 minutes or so, just take a look at this, see if there's anything you think we're really missing or want to add based on those protected areas. Yeah, so if you wanted to add more hub sites links, you can. We also have our brown and black markers that are kind of our catch-all to, like, if you want to write a note, but thinking through, okay, like for example, so now it's like, okay, we know that all of this land is protected. So even if it's not natural area, maybe that's going to be a nice link, like an extension of our link here.
Right.
So, that could help with wildlife movement, things like that. Similarly, this area up here, a lot of protected farmland. So maybe we want to think through like, okay, knowing these fence rows could be appropriate links, particularly if they're going to be protected and not developed. So it's just been a few minutes kind of comparing to this map, and if you have any notes or questions.
So what a protected area, what's it protected from?
Development. Yep.
So the farmland is already sort of developed, but you can't build houses.
Correct. Yeah, so that's where we're really thinking about that impervious surfaces, right? So we've already, given it's farmland, we have lost some of those ecosystem service benefits provided by those natural spaces. But farmland, agricultural land, we still need it, right? Local food production, things like that. But then also, open space is always going to be better than impervious areas as far as water quality. A lot of these agricultural areas too, depending on what the landowners have decided to do, could eventually be restored to wetland and forest. They just can't be developed. So they can only go one direction. So they can stay farmland or be restored.
Or grassland.
So,
Or grassland, yes.
I mean, another question I have is, what does it take for something to become protected? These are official.
Those are official, yeah, so it really depends on the process. So Scio Township has a land preservation village that helps provide taxpayer money to protect lands.
Right.
This area is also in the Ann Arbor Greenbelt boundary. So the Ann Arbor Greenbelt program protects land through conservation easements. So several of these are probably Greenbelt properties. And then we have a lot of nonprofit land protection groups around. Legacy Land Conservancy is a big one. So those groups are going to also be able to put conservation easements on properties. And then the township itself can purchase lands for protection. So lots of different ways in this part of the world to protect land.
But they're all some legal arrangement.
Yes,
And
yes.
it
So,
constrains
yep.
the owners.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
So in the case of something like a conservation easement,
Mhm.
the right to develop that property has either been sold
Yeah.
by the property owner or donated.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you said this already, but many of those conservation easements are on farmland, not natural land, which is the bioreserve map is just natural land.
Yes.
Hey, Liz, I have a question for you. When we do agricultural easements, do they say that you also have to maintain like the hedgerows and some of the trees on the sites? Are those protected as?
It would just be, you know, it would be written into the easement itself, but in general, the person farming the land would maintain it in the same condition as it was when it was constructed. Yeah.
Natural beauty.
It's a natural beauty road.
It's just like Marshall.
And if your map looks pretty good, you don't have to shake it up. I just wanted to give the contrast here.
It's certainly not too bad.
Kate,
Yes.
I wanted to ask a question, yes. So I see that this is outlined in red. I don't know that was it intended? Are the two maps identical?
Yes.
Okay, so it's
Yep,
pretty,
so what that probably is a bioreserve area, which again, only focuses on natural
you're
land.
talking about the white hatch,
I'm talking about the red
the
outline.
red, okay.
Yep, so the bioreserve map does not care whether the land's protected, it doesn't care
Right.
about property owner boundaries, it's just looking for those big hunks of
So
natural land.
right through here, you can see small ponds, big ponds, little ponds, and it goes across Marshall and it flows down and through the grasslands that crosses underneath Zeeb and then becomes Honey Creek. So this is a natural runoff area.
That's a connection, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, so that could be a great link, yep.
Yeah, and I think this is
Get
it
that
right
man a
here.
blue.
Get that blue. Get him on, whichever's dark.
I'm trying to see, so if I
See,
If I
follow
just
the green-
extended
follow those
this,
Green line, yeah, right there.
and I want to make sure that I catch there's little ponds here, and it goes down through the Greens property, and it crosses underneath Marshall, right about here. This isn't quite like this. So all that is a natural drain that has a bunch of infiltration ponds, really. So barely above groundwater in some of them and barely below in others.
Careful, Bob, we got a marker down here, I'm just gonna grab. So nobody trips on it.
Are those agricultural drains considered part of the watershed?
Yes,
They are.
Yeah, so
And does this map include all of them?
it should
And all
include
the little
most of them.
ponds?
The GIS expert who actually printed
I
this
thought
map
I
for
was
me
doing it
noted
here.
that,
No, I think what they want is actually.
stream layer is old, because he found a few
Oh.
discrepancies with him, so I needed to.
I was just trying to,
but yeah,
Okay.
I
yeah.
was gonna put it. in
But yeah,
glass.
we had someone around here just noted
But
that there was a
because-
drain not on the map and marked it,
Yeah.
so please do do
So
that.
they said.
If you know there's
Yeah, I
something.
see
What were
it.
you saying?
Drain, but I don't see the.
Because they're connecting this.
Okay.
Which is
because it
not on
does
my
come down to
property,
here,
so.
right?
You just wanna
I
draw
can't
it
really
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
just following
Oh,
the
I
creek.
see.
Following the
Just
creek.
keep going.
Keep connecting
Okay. I was thinking, take it to the creek and
It's
that
all
creek was the
connected.
natural. There we go. And where's your land? Is it
Right here.
this?
Uh-huh.
This?
Have-
And
You're right there, right?
I'm right.
Because that's something that we aren't gonna look
And
at.
here.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I'm not protected, but I'm right in between all
Mhm.
these. This right now is completely dry. It's just muck.
Yeah.
Down there, so it's-
So it's my vernal pond.
Yep. That's what it is.
That's why it's a vernal pond.
Yep.
Yeah.
Keep thinking we should have a pathway going all the way from Mill Creek and Dexter, past the high school, across Park, across Baker, and then go through Erica and Mike's farm, and keep going down through the wetlands.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and the county does have.
Anybody know what
And the county's land protection board does use the bioreserve map as their thinking.
Scio Church.
Well,
Just off of South.
yeah, so what I would advise first is that.
It looks like there might be a
put
little
all
site in there. You can
Yeah.
always mark one.
I don't
Together
know.
into this
Yeah.
green infrastructure network.
Wonder if anybody actually knew.
I would check that out as a
But
tool
it's-
for Scio and see
No,
what happens. I think the limitation with just the bioreserve map is, because it doesn't capture the smaller areas, it often, I think, can bias towards, you know, it's like a lot of areas that apply for the protection of our fire reserve areas.
When you walk.
I was just trying to find a cross street. This area you were asking?
Man,
Yeah.
I think it was Liz. I just did this.
Oh, okay. Honey Creek.
Well, that was.
Fine
I think-
sport.
Murphy's a horse.
Horse trainer.
It's tough to do it all. It really is. We do what we can, but, and hopefully.
Probably
there's-
not naturally. But no. Naming. Tough to come up
Yeah, here's what it looks like on the map.
Yeah, so Kate just added
tough to come up with a good one.
the next slide, which is additional areas of importance. So if you haven't yet gotten out the black or brown markers, these are micro level sites of importance. So there's a few examples, whether it be like a really small wetland, a pond, woodlot, wildflower patch, you know, these are places that maybe only you know, and very few other people know. So you can definitely mark those as just little dots on the map.
No, like when they would make those temporary fences or whatever on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Mechanisms are good. Yeah.
So there's on that earlier, right, where they salad
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what Kate said earlier was, even if,
Number 9.
just wanna clarify for Liz here, she said for battlefield, is that a natural area?
Yeah,
My
I know,
understanding is
yeah.
not if it's been modified by humans in the past 100 years.
For our purposes, I think we can consider it natural area based on the purposes of GI network, but for a bioreserve area, it wouldn't have been.
Any little spot that you know about, that maybe is
Unless
like
we
a pond
thought that, unless the satellite imagery on
wildflower patch.
area.
It could be that.
Yeah.
So these farms that have been, you know,
They were once drainage areas, like that was interesting.
Open space.
open space now, or there's some.
This is the edge.
It's not all farm edge.
This is forested area.
And look at this right next to it.
I would treat that as part of our network, but not one of those high quality hubs. Yeah, well, thinking about landscaping.
Apparently this owner.
Yeah, there's a few big ones, but yeah, I mean, this is a class, I mean, Scio's not unique in our fragmented landscape. Yeah, you may have 3 to 5 hubs, and then from there you're looking at site connections.
Before they sell it off. Especially when they say no.
Yeah, as best you can, yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, but then you know, thinking about applications, if it falls into a really key area of your network, maybe it's higher on your priority. Okay, so I think Andrea mentioned, but if there's anything else we want to add to the map, even if it has nothing to do with our network, any special sites of interest.
2025.
Yeah, I just made this last week.
It was printed last. When was the picture taken last week?
Oh, the satellite imagery is probably a couple years old. So if you're seeing areas in the imagery, yeah, it's just base map imagery. I think it's from 2022. But I put it together last week. Yep. But, all right. So if there's anything else we want to add to our map, even if it's outside of our network, things that we really want to pay attention to, like I mentioned earlier, like a field of trillium or a really beautiful little woodlot that you know exists. Those are things we can definitely add to our map in our brown and black colors.
Yeah, right.
I'd also invite people, if you want to label things, like if you know, if your community calls certain areas the farmer's Scio preserve or something, even if that's not what it's called, feel free to label some things on the map. Just helps us understand more like how people use the space and what you know about the area. And that's our last assignment, and then I've got 2 more slides.
Oh, boy. Well, most of these Scio properties.
Yes, yes, most of them
And
are
we
already
labeled the
Okay.
sunward forest, right?
It's
Oh,
along
yeah.
the creek, so it's.
That's labeled as.
Yes, and I have access to the official names, you know, but if there's little pockets that, you know, folks have names for.
Then people will.
That's that little area between,
Oh, they were gonna build the old folks.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was before you got.
Yeah, that was a long time.
What is put on
This
the?
side of the creek.
She said
Other,
no,
other.
just other, it doesn't fit into other, the three other categories.
There's retention ponds back there, yeah, earlier this year.
It's kind of a, yeah.
We've got a green.
Yeah.
Oh,
She said we
yeah,
could
we've
put
already
notes
got
on
green
it,
around it, yeah.
to like label it, so they understand how it's being used.
Pond. And then the bridge, vernal pond.
We need to get more wood. Please don't come around there.
Just this part of
This whole field.
Alright, so for folks that maybe wanna leave a little early, I'm just gonna go through the rest of my couple slides, but then for folks that really wanna stare at the map more, if you wanna come back and do some drawing, you're welcome to. So you're welcome to sit if you like, if you wanna stay standing, you're also welcome to. Just a couple more pieces of info. Alright, so going back to the beginning, our ecosystem service pyramid here, excuse me. So as I mentioned before, the last piece is a pyramid, and I got a few questions about it. But in our developed areas, you know, areas where folks live, where they work, we've got our land use map over here that if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, you can. You can really see that big hunk of development through the center of your community that you're all aware of. We didn't talk at all about how to improve those areas for community benefit, but that's absolutely something that we can also think about. And that's something that the Watershed Council can come back and talk about, is things like these nature-based solutions, these rain gardens, how to reduce impervious surface. But just wanted to highlight that. It's not what we focused on.
Look it up, I don't have my math.
But what we did do today, I hope everybody had fun doing some mapping. I mentioned earlier, you guys are my most engaged group of folks. Thank you very much. You make my life a lot easier. And I hope, you know, your community can really benefit from all of your work. Engaged. So what's gonna happen next? So I'm gonna take the map that you created and put it into the computer and stare at it for a long time and integrate all those notes back into our geospatial system. Then we're gonna create a draft GI network map and a document that contains recommendations based on what we saw in the workshop, based on what folks have shared with us from your planning commission about your community's interest in natural lands protection. I'm the ecologists on staff, but David and Andrea are our policy folks, so they're gonna be thinking a lot about what ordinances might benefit the community, zoning, you know, conservation recommendations, things like that. So we're gonna put together this whole plan for you. And then we're gonna provide it back to the community as a draft. That'll be the opportunity for the planning commission to say, you know, we're confused about this, tell us more about this really doesn't work for us, that kind of thing. And the goal here is really to identify recommendations that we could integrate into your master plan, community policies, to really drive land protection in a targeted way in your community. So I'll be creating a map, so here's a copy of one that we built for Lodi. And again, you know, unfortunately, we probably can't protect land everywhere, but hopefully this exercise allows us to be a little bit more targeted and strategic. When we do have landowners who come to us, maybe there's some in this room, they're like, I really want to protect my land, that will allow the community to say, yes, we really, you know, we care about all land, but we really care about this piece because it's in this critical link or in this critical things like that. That's what's gonna happen next. We'd like to say thank you very much. Again, my name is Kate. We got David back there, Andrea out there. We did end a little bit early, so if folks want to hang around, continue to draw, great. If you want to ask us questions, great. Andrea is signaling me over there. We have survey that we really, it's very brief, and we really love what you filled out. We really do incorporate your feedback. I'm not new to this job, but I am new to the job of doing this task. I mentioned Chris Olson, she was my predecessor, that created this workshop, so Andrea and David and I are learning a lot and would really value your feedback, so please fill one of those out when you leave. Yeah,
And if anybody wants to leave emails, are you collecting emails?
We have emails. If you want to subscribe to the Huron River Watershed Council's email newsletter, please let me know on the way out and I can opt you into our email communication so you can stay in the loop on volunteer opportunities, other events coming up related to the watershed.
We only sent about one email. Wonderful. Thank you all. If you have questions, I'll be here. Don't feel like you need to run out. Stare at the map more if you like. Thank you all very much for coming.
We are composting everything, our food waste and the plates and so forth. Right here, and if you haven't signed up to be a part of the food waste composting program in Scio, we can show you how to do that.
I got till 11:59 tonight.
Oh,
I can show you.
oh, it's almost
It's
done.
almost done. I'm just fine to, it's not, it's just a rough draft.
Thanks for coming.
It's in a shed, so the bins.
They, it was good seeing you.
I think I see, yes, she's got it. Yeah.